fast.
Right. And it can stand like you're playing it on an acoustic and
Right.
that type of stuff. Of course, you can go and you know, dress it up a bit.
Sure.
But yeah, that's kind of the whole idea of the show is to you know, if you can pull it off on an acoustic guitar or a
Right.
piano or something, great. You know, but if you can't, then you
Right,
know, it
right.
really, I don't think it stands on its own. Anyway, so I saw, looking at the list of people here, Ellis Paul, Steve Forbert, that you've played with, shared the stage with. Steve's he was one of the guys that, when I first heard him back, I heard him on WDVE probably 1977,
Right.
when he came out with his first Live on Arrival.
Right.
And I was like, wow, this guy's playing stuff that, like, man, you can do that.
Yeah. For the time, it was amazing. I mean, for the disco era, and he came out with that. What was it, Romeo's theme? Or Romeo's?
Yeah, but actually the album before that, yeah, but that whole thing when
Yeah.
he did the Romeo's tune, yeah.
Yeah.
But I heard it. I was like, it was some kind of I don't know where I heard it. You know, he did. I forget what song it was. It was like being promoted as the record off of that.
Right.
And I went out and got it right away. You know, I had it on vinyl, and I gave away my vinyl at one point. I moved to Philadelphia. We were living in West Virginia. Moved to Philadelphia, and don't you know, he was playing a show, and I met him, and I was like, oh my God, I had that record. I could have got an autograph. Anyway, but yes, so they were touting him at one point. Oh, he's the next Springsteen, you know, or the next Bob Dylan, or actually, yeah, he was the next Bob Dylan. I remember that was everybody was saying. So there's a thread. You talk about this thread of American music, you know, American folk music. I grew up listening to a lot of the blues stuff, Delta blues kind of thing. But if you know, Woody Guthrie to Bob Dylan, I think would be that thread of American folk. And then, you know, it's kind of like I would say it would go to Springsteen in terms of the mantle of who's carrying on that tradition, right? And there's kind of a toss up there because I really like Steve Earle too. He's kind of that obscure protest kind of singer guy, you know. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to like.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, you know, I mean, we're talking about the people that obviously have hit records. I mean, but there's so many writers that are kind of fly under the radar. I think that, you know, that we miss, you know, and I think that in America, because the American way is very trend oriented.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that, like in Europe, I think that people are a little bit more open to, you know, they're not following trends as much as they are seeing what's real.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
right.
Lots of. I mean, I tour Europe at least once or twice a year, and I've got so many friends that go over there that it's just a different way of treating the music. I think, you know.
More as an art form.
Right. So I mean, we see in America. I mean, obviously Bruce Springsteen is very famous in Europe and but there's so many other people that can go over there and make a pretty good living, or at least play to a decent size audience.
Yeah.
You know?
So I mean, guys like Ellis Paul and stuff
sure.
like that have the name recognition. I was just kind of trying to, you know, when I guess the musicology history books are written, you know, what that thread of. I know that he came out with that Pete Seeger record.
Right.
It was very roots oriented. It seems to me that I don't know if it came with that one soundtrack to the movie. Oh shoot, escapes me now. Anyway, it seems like we've been getting back to more of this roots bluegrass type of movement as kind of.
Are you talking about Brother?
Yeah, Brother. Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? Yeah, it seemed like that was kind
Sure.
of all of a sudden all this roots music, and maybe you know, the consciousness of America seemed to shift right about that period, maybe after 9/11 or whatever. People were just, you know, seemed to be appreciating more just real music as opposed to you know, this American Idol thing, the phenomenon that is out there.
Yeah. I probably agree with you. I think because also too the fact that, you know, for so many years we lived, our society is, you know, for so many years was very, we are a very conservative society. So a lot of times the arts will represent the opposite of that, you know. So the more conservative you get, I mean, during the Reagan era and the Bush eras, you know, there's a lot more, you'll hear a lot more of the artists, not just musicians, but painters and actors or whatever. They'll they're sort of batting from the other side of the plate, you know.
Yeah, Fred. I'm sorry. Yeah, Fred and I were talking about that a little bit. That you know, it as an artist, there were a lot of anti-war songs that obviously would have came out during the '60s period and also during the last, you know, the Bush administration and so forth. So now the flip side of that, I guess, you know, there's going to be like a Tea Party artist that will come out.
I don't know about that.
We were talking about that, you know. We'll have a right-wing conservative folk singer come out of there.
I'm not sure that's going to work.
Yeah, but so the roots music that has been coming out. So where do you find your inspiration for songwriting, other than what you're observing, traveling over in Europe and places that you've been? What really, is it like the working man theme type? Do you find that?
Well, I mean, you are what you are. I mean, I think that I grew up, my father was a steam fitter. He was a construction worker. My grandfather was a steel worker from Czechoslovakia. And, you know, you kind of, it's just that mentality, you know, that's inside you, of how you grow up and what you see, you know, how I raised my kids and all that, you know, all these things that happen in your family. And I think as an artist, I don't care what kind of artist you are, you're probably more aware of things that are going on around you. And I think that's the key to being a pretty decent artist. I think you have to be aware. You're more aware and open to seeing what's happening around you.
You just observe and take everything in, and this amalgam comes out. You know, there'll be the muse will strike you. Is that kind of how it happens? You could be driving in the car, and all of a sudden you get this idea for a song, and you have to jot everything down and everything.
Yeah, well, I try not to. I mean, I'm not the best driver, so I probably shouldn't be doing that. But yeah, there's certain things like that will happen. But I'm a very lazy writer. I write a lot actually, but if I sit down and I'm writing something, what usually happens, I go through periods of like months where I'm writing so much. And then I'll look back and I'll see what I have, and usually that's what makes up the record, how I was feeling at a particular time, you know. So that's where the focus of the record usually comes in when I'm writing a record. I'm just writing. I'm not actually sitting down saying, well, I need to write a song about whatever, you know, a certain subject, as much as I just start writing. And usually, when I go back and see all the things that I've written, there's a definite path that I'm traveling on that I might not have known that I was traveling on at the time.
Yeah. Do you find yourself going back in like the archives of stuff maybe that you haven't finished completely and then going, oh wow, that fits here? And I find myself doing that a lot.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Yeah, sure. Sometimes, yeah. Or going back there and saying, boy, there's some great lyrics here, but the music is not what I want. You know, so you'll change everything. You know, you'll change the music around, or maybe the opposite. Maybe you get a nice piece of music, but the lyrics just aren't doing it for you.
I wrote some stuff years ago that, at the time that I wrote it, I mean, it couldn't have, I would have played it out and somebody would have said, to me at that period of time, it would have been in the 80s, mid-80s, and, you know, talk about trends. You know,
sure.
We were both in probably hair bands back then, and, you know, I wrote stuff that would be considered Americana back then, but I would have never played it out, only because, you know, it was just the trend thing that I was involved in at that point.
Right, well, you're young, you're just trying to find your voice, you're trying to find